Alright folks, there will be spoilers. I'm telling you right now, I don't want to hear it in the comment section that, oh, Mr. Snow over here did not tell us that there was going to be a spoiler warning. No, I am going to be talking not necessarily in-depth about the plot, but the big story beats are going to be spoiled for you. So, you have your warning. If you don't want to get spoiled, go play the game. I think it's really, really good. It's about... I beat it my first try in about 5 hours, minimal messing around. So, it's a short game, but that's what the newer Resident Evils are all about, being shorter experiences that you can replay on harder difficulty modes with a bunch of new equipment each time around. Either way, I say fun game, awesome game, go play it, Resident Evil Village. Let's get into this.
All clear. Come on, move! Chris? What the hell? Take him away.
In life and in death, we give glory. The bell tolls for us all. They're coming again!
Mia.
Quit being so paranoid. Long ago, a young girl went with her mother to pick berries for her father, who was hard at work. But the forest greeted them with a dark, cold silence, the bushes empty. Yet determined to find the berries, the rascal broke free of Mother's grasp and vanished into the trees. Mother's worried cries faded fast as the girl ran on, over vine, under branch, and into the forest deep.
And in death, we give you glory. Mother Miranda.
It's just a local tale.
If it's just looking, window shop away.
Alright, so diving right in, Chris guns down Ethan's wife, an absolutely hilarious display. I mean, she doesn't even try to duck after getting shot the first time. She was kind of asking for it at that point. Chris then snatches up Ethan and his infant daughter Rose, but wouldn't you know it, something happens to the transport and Ethan is left babyless in the middle of the snow. After bumming around the titular village, Ethan gets captured by Magneto. No, I am not kidding. Well, as the main character, Ethan manages to escape and comes across the internet's new fetish, Lady Dimitrescu. Look, all I'm saying is if I go on Amazon the day before the game's release and the overwhelming majority of products for Resident Evil Village is Lady Dimitrescu pinups and lewds for sale, y'all might have a problem. Have some self-control and pride is all I ask out of my peers. And this is where I'm happy to say the vampires get killed off pretty fast. You can get through it in probably a couple hours if you don't know what you're doing. I'd say they make up about the first third or so of the game. She's also your first real boss fight and...
You found me beautiful once.
Honey, you got real ugly.
The next section is House Beneviento, and this is hands down the most terrifying section of a video game I've ever played. The rest of the game, meh, some suspense here and there, but nothing that'll keep you up at night. The second house, screaming aloud on my Discord stream while my friends all laugh at me. That giant fetus came chasing me, and all I said was...
Hell no. To the no, no, no. Hell to the no. Hell to the no.
Once out of that nightmare, the game becomes significantly less horror-focused and leans straight into Resident Evil 4. So, Ethan comes up on a sunken section of the village where he fights a gross fishman in a completely forgettable section of the game with a completely forgettable antagonist. Moving on. The last guy Ethan has to face is Magneto, who has decided to turn against Mother Miranda. Guess whose help he wants? And guess who says no? Now, I'll give Magneto his credit. He had a plan. Build an army of super zombies and overthrow Miranda because he's mad at her for performing her experiments on him to begin with. Really, if Magneto just phrased things differently, I don't see why Ethan wouldn't help him. In the midst of all the exploring, Ethan runs into Chris, who finally decides to tell him, and thus the audience, what's going on. Miranda can shapeshift like Mystique and had apparently been posing as Mia for an unspecified amount of time. Chris tried to kill Miranda when he shot up your house and wanted to imprison Ethan and Rose for their safety. So, wait, Chris didn't want Ethan to get involved, so instead of just telling him what was happening so he'd know what was up and why he should stay out of it and thus leave it to the professionals, Chris instead opts to try murdering who Ethan thought was his wife in front of him and kidnaps his daughter again in front of him with no explanation whatsoever.
Your brilliance knows no bounds.
Well, it's the end of the road now and Miranda pulls a Kano on Ethan, however, fret not. As it turns out, Ethan has that good mold in him and is as indestructible as the plot demands. I actually like this idea. Turns out, back in Resident Evil 7, old Jack Baker actually killed Ethan in the estate, where he was then infected with the mold and resurrected. This explains how Ethan can take getting his, hand or foot chopped off and reattached so easily. Chris now gets a brief segment where he gets to go all commando on hordes of bad guys before we regain control of Ethan, who goes in for the final boss fight with Miranda. Ethan wins, Rose is saved, the village is destroyed, and Ethan dies because his plot armor wore off. Overall, I like it better than Resident Evil 7, but that's because I like Resident Evil 4 better than the classics. If you want survival horror, Resident Evil 7 is going to be more your speed. In fact, with the village assets, merchant, inventory system, and some news discovered in dev notes that Ada was worked in but ultimately scrapped, I'm pretty sure an RE4 remake is coming up next, and I'd be down with that. It's all the things borrowed from RE4 and improved upon that I liked best in the game. Aside from gameplay, I have to give my props to Dimitrescu and Heisenberg's voice acting. Really well done, and with Heisenberg being my personal favorite. The only things I didn't like were all lore-related. For example, why was Rose being dismembered a thing? When I found her head in a jar, I thought for sure it was some trick and the baby wasn't really split into 4 pieces. But nope, apparently Ethan's baby is a Mr. Potato Head. And when you finally get her, the model is the same as when you lost her. There's also the lack of reasoning as to what splitting her into 4 pieces even did. They needed her whole for the ceremony, and they just put her back together anyway. I've already touched on it, but the entire game could have been avoided, or more accurately played from Chris's viewpoint, if he just sat Ethan down and told him what was going on. Oh, he's worried Ethan would get himself involved? Worst comes to worst, you just temporarily detain him. Or if you really didn't want to talk to Ethan, wait until Miranda is alone, then light her up. Don't make a big show in front of Ethan. Really, the whole plot kicks off due to poor planning. And finally, this mold is probably the most random virus / parasite / mutagen thing the series has ever used. The mold plus whatever the cadeau is, because that was never even remotely explained, can either turn you into a mindless werewolf or a freaking X-Man. And you learn in a file that Oswald Spencer was a student of Miranda's while she was already functionally immortal via the mold, and still bragged about the progenitor virus as the next step in human evolution. No, Miranda pretty much won that competition the moment the mold didn't immediately turn her into a mindless tyrant. Alright folks, again, Resident Evil Village, spoiled pretty much the whole game. I mean, there's a couple little details here and there that I didn't go over, but that's the broad strokes. Again, definitely recommend it, go play it, it's a fun game. Mercenaries mode makes a comeback. It's not quite the same as it was in previous games because you don't get preset characters. You get to choose your own loadout. It's honestly more akin to the raid mode from Revelations 2 more than a Mercenaries mode from like Old School 4 or something like that. But it's a fun game. Highly recommend it. Worth every penny. It is short, so I don't know. Maybe people will complain about that because they complained that Resident Evil 3 was short, but took me only about an extra hour and a half maybe to beat this one than my first time beating Resident Evil 3 remake. Anyway, I enjoyed it. I think you'll enjoy it. Now go out there and treat each other like you have some sense.